On this episode of Entertainment Education, the podcast, the one with film, we discuss that movies are often viewed as a form of entertainment, yet they also serve as an important tool for learning and shaping the way audiences understand history, culture, politics, and the world around them. Our discussion examines how film can educate viewers even when teaching is not the primary purpose, and how the rise of streaming platforms has transformed the ways people consume, engage with, and learn from media. We also take a deeper look at the political and social dimensions of film, particularly in the horror genre. Joining me this episode is Professor of Media and Film History, Brian Shelton.
Help Spanish. You're taking 12th grade calculus?
Yeah, I like math.
Ew, why?
Because it's the same in every country.
It's beautiful.
Entertainment Education, the podcast, an 8-part series where host Alan Babiars-Lira will take you through the journey of how entertainment can educate and create social change.
Oh, yes, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 3. We're almost halfway through the season. I cannot believe it. This summer is flying by. But once again, and I know I say it every week, I have a good friend of mine with me and another colleague. Please welcome to the show this week. We are going to talk about film with Professor, Media and Film Professor, Brian Shelton. Hello, Brian.
Hey, Alan, how you doing?
Doing well. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. Are you ready to jump into it?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, sure.
So take me back to when Brian was about yay high, and
I'm still about that yay high, but yeah.
Well,
yeah.
How did your interest in film and media start?
Yeah, I talk about this a lot when I'm introducing myself to students. My dad, when he was in the Air Force, he worked at the Air Force Base movie theater as a projectionist. And so he has this deep love of movies. But before that, when my dad was a young kid, before his sisters were born, both of his parents were working multiple jobs to get by. And on the weekends, they would drop him off at the local movie theater. And he would spend the entire day at the movie theater watching movies and serials and cartoons and that sort of thing. And so my dad has this like deep love for movies, and he passed that on to me. And as a kid, we always went to the movies. I mean, we went to the movies on a very regular basis. We went to the drive-in. I think we were like the first people in the neighborhood to have a VHS deck. We had cable. They let us stay up late at night watching movies that we probably shouldn't have been watching at our age and that sort of thing, you know. So movies and television, that sort of thing, have always been a part of my life. And I don't know that I knew that was something I wanted to do as a career or anything like that. But it was certainly a really big part of my childhood and a big part of my life.
So how did you let that transition into your work then?
Yeah, kind of weird. Again, another story that I tell students all the time. I went to school to major in environmental and hazardous materials management with an emphasis in health physics.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And first week on campus, you know, when they do the campus, the clubs are all set up and you go around and you walk around and you find out what's going on campus. I saw that they had a radio station and I was like, oh, radio, that's really cool. I'd watch movies with radio when I was a kid, you know, like Good Morning Vietnam and Pump Up the Volume and that sort of thing, you know, in high school. And I was like, oh, I'll go work at the campus radio station. That'll be fun. And so I got involved in that. And about halfway through my undergraduate program, I changed my major to communication because I was kind of full-time involved at the radio station. I wound up being the general manager of the radio station about a year into that process. And so then the career developed from there, went from radio into photography and then into television and film and documentary and then full-time into teaching and producing. So.
Wow, that is actually really interesting. I kind of have a similar story. I was going to work in advertising and PR, but that's still in the communication realm. That is nowhere near environmental,
Right.
blah, 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 blah. Um, so, so just the passion made you change your mind that way, or?
Well, it was, I mean, I'm going to be completely honest with you. It's a couple of things. One, I really love what I was doing with radio, and like that was like amazing, right? That's what I was doing. And I wasn't doing very well in my major. I mean, just the honest truth. I mean, I wasn't doing well. Um, and I've told the story to a couple of people, including the president of the university where I went. My advisor was a guy named Daniel May, and he was a professor in the program. And he called me in for a meeting one day, and he sat me down and talked about what my career prospects were in the major. And he said, I hear you on the radio every morning when I drive into campus, and you're really good at that, but you stink at this. And you really need to think about changing your major to what it is that you're really good at. And that was like a real, punch in the gut, that was a hard thing to hear as a 19, 20-year-old kid, you know. But it was the best thing that anybody has ever said to me and ever done for me. So yeah,
Because as a 19, 20-year-old, we all think we know the whole world at that point, and we know
that's
everything.
right. That's right. And we know nothing. So
Let me
yeah,
tell you, as a 40 something, I still don't feel that way. But
I feel the same. Yep. Yep.
all right, let's jump back to the film, Brian.
Yeah.
The primary goal, I don't want to say the primary goal, but one of the main goals of film is to entertain us.
Sure.
We love watching film, we love being entertained. But how can we use films as educational tools as well? Because there's not just a streamline between learning and reading, right? There's a visual aspect to it as well. So how do we add that into these learning tools? Or how do we bring these learning tools in, I should say?
Yeah. Film is a visual art, which, seems like kind of a no-brainer statement there, but it's a visual art. Cinematographers are telling us where to look, why to look, at what we're seeing on screen. And so you have that. And then you have the narrative storytelling part of film. I'm a firm believer that film can be a great educational tool. Now, there are films that are just purely designed to entertain us, Alan. Of course, we all know that, right? We're not, and
Yes.
I won't name certain brands, but there are films that are designed solely for the purpose of making money, and that's okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's a film out right now by Steven Spielberg that a lot of people are either not getting or not liking, and I'm having conversations with people online about this, and they're like, well, what did you get out of it? And I'm like, I didn't get anything out of it. I went to the movies and I had a really good time for 2 hours by one of the greatest directors who's ever made a film, right? But anyway, getting back to the to the
And I
discussion.
could get away from this crazy world for 2 hours, right?
Exactly. Get away from the world for 2 hours. Exactly. Right. I can fantasize for a little bit. Yeah. And so those films have their place. But I'm a firm believer that, and we talk about this in classes all the time, especially in the film history courses, that, films can really give us a chance to learn about the world. They can give us a chance to learn about different cultures and different peoples by watching them, right? What can you learn about post-war Italy by watching, Bicycle Thieves, the great Italian neorealism film, right? What can you learn about India by watching Slumdog Millionaire, right? Maybe that's your
Mhm.
only, maybe as a person, that's your only exposure to India, right? You don't know anyone who's Indian, you've never eaten Indian food, you never traveled to India, you wouldn't even think of traveling to India, right? But maybe you watch this really big hit movie, Slumdog Millionaire, and now you think you have some idea of what India is like. Now, we wouldn't want people thinking that all of India is like what they see in Slumdog Millionaire, right? But it gives people an exposure. And that is one thing that I really like about film and showing film from all over the world and trying to get students in particular to look at films from all over the world is that they learn about different people, different places, different cultures. Um, and it can really open up people's eyes to that, right? You just have to be
Mhm.
careful that you're not stereotyping a culture by using only
Absolutely.
one, and that's a real issue there. Yeah. But I think that films are designed to be entertainment first and foremost, but we can learn a lot about people, places, and things by watching them. Yeah.
So, you mentioned one thing, don't stereotype and don't bring that in. Do you think then we could use it as the opposite, as a, hey, don't do this kind of film?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, I mean, usually every semester I show Spike Right Thing, right? And that film is a very much, I don't know, Alan, can I say bad words on your show? I don't know.
Sure, absolutely.
Don't be a racist asshole. That's what
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
yeah,
that's what that movie is about, right? So
absolutely.
yeah, and so movies are really great for that sort of thing, right? Like, hey, look at the way you're behaving through these characters, right? Maybe you see something in yourself, maybe you see something in yourself from those characters, and you start thinking to yourself, do I really want to be like that person? Is that how I want to behave? Is that how I want to live my life? Is that how I want people to see me, right? And so films are really good for that as well. Of course, you got to be the kind of person who's open to a little bit of a little bit of influence there. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I know this is kind of a loaded question, and the
Yeah,
next one that I'm gonna ask you is, since the pandemic, movie watching has just not been the same, right? We had to
right.
shift dramatically because of this. Um, I was talking to somebody on episode 2 last week. We were talking about nostalgia, and we were talking about sitting in the movie theater collectively as a unit with other fans for The Last Jedi. When The Last Jedi came out, that was, I didn't grow up with the original Star Wars, obviously. But when that came out, that was like incredible, and we all sat as fans together. So how do you think streaming has really changed the way audiences learn and engage with the media?
Well, you know, I don't want to be totally negative about it because I do my fair share of streaming, right? I
Absolutely.
mean, I watched a movie this morning from 1980 called The Final Countdown, which I was surprised I had never seen. It's a
Hmm.
strange time travel film, but anyway, so I would say that generally speaking, um, streaming has ruined movies in a way for a couple of reasons. One, you have fewer people in the movie theater. And being in a movie theater, a crowded movie theater, seeing a movie is a completely different experience than being in a movie theater by yourself, which I often am. I'll go to the movies and be the only person there,
Mhm.
and or sitting at home and watching it. Those are different experiences, right? I talk to students about this all the time when they're watching silent films. I'm like, these movies were not designed to be watched at home on YouTube on your phone. They were designed to be seen in a theater with a couple of hundred people with live music being played while you were watching them. That's a completely different experience, right? You've changed. It's the old Marshall McLuhan, right? The medium is the message. You've completely changed the
Absolutely.
medium, right? You've changed the medium there, so therefore you've changed the message. Um, and what I really love, a little plug for the Music Box Theater in Chicago. It's a theater that seats over 700 people, and you can go there on a Saturday for a matinee and see a film from the 1940s, and there's 700 people in there with you
Hmm.
watching that movie, and everyone is laughing or being shocked by the horror or crying because of the romance or whatever, 700 people in a room, that's a completely different experience from a movie than streaming it. So you have the experience, the theatrical experience is part of the problem. The other part of the problem with streaming, and this is not original thought here. In fact, I was at the Auditorium Theater in Chicago this past week. John Cusack was showing his film,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, Gross Point Blank, and he was talking about streaming and with Richard Roper, and they were talking about how films that are designed to be on streaming networks such as Netflix, Amazon, that sort of thing, they assume that the audience is. I won't say that they assume the audience is stupid, but they assume that the audience is doing something else while they're watching the movie. And the
Hmm.
assumption is on the streamers that what you are watching on Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, or whatever is a second screen experience. And that you are most likely looking at your phone while you're watching it, or you're cooking dinner while you're watching it, or folding laundry while you're watching it, right? You're doing anything but actually watching the movie. And so they have dumbed down the films to the point where they have to explain the plot point to you over and over and over again as you're watching it, right? And the example that Roper gave at the talk was like, we have to get 5 stones, but we've only got 3. Remember, everyone, we need all 5 stones for this to work, right? And then that gets repeated throughout the movie, right? And so I think that the streamers are, again, not necessarily assuming that the audience is dumb, but they're assuming that they're doing something else. And by doing that, they're dumbing down the movie. And by doing that, they're dumbing down cinema in general. Does that make any sense? Do you follow what I'm? Yeah.
Absolutely, because at first I thought you were talking about Dora the Explorer. Not going to lie. You're like, we need 5 stones. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And then I'm like, wait, is he talking about Thanos? And it came to me. So I know I completely agree. That is a unique perspective that honestly I've never thought about before. But yeah, that is a thing because and I'm totally guilty of this. While I'm grading papers or doing
Yes.
something, I'll throw on a movie in the
Yes.
background just to do it.
Listen,
Absolutely.
I watch Lawrence of Arabia every year while I'm making coq au vin, right? Like I'm
Hmm.
going to spend 3 hours cooking in the kitchen. I put Lawrence of Arabia on the TV and I walk back and forth from the living room to the kitchen to watch Lawrence. Now, is that how you should watch Lawrence of Arabia? No, but it's my annual screening of it, right? So,
Absolutely not. And also, coming off the nostalgia episode, and sorry to keep referencing back to
that's
that,
okay.
but you just reminded me, like, growing up during like the Easter season, you would watch the Ten Commandments
Sure.
on TV on that Sunday night, and it was like 9.5 hours long because there was commercials in there.
Commercials. Yeah.
But you know, it's a different experience than just popping in the VHS and watching it fully through. I would argue that the same could be said with like Sound of Music or Wizard of Oz or any of those classics that they show during or that are prevalent during the holiday season, I should say. But absolutely that happens. So let's get a little bit. I want to get into politics behind films a little bit.
Okay, maybe.
Uh, not those kind of politics. We're gonna. I try to steer clear of those very much here, but um, you know, movies are made for particular reasons at times, right? We talked about the ones that are just entertaining. We talked about the ones that are teaching lessons that we could use, right? Let's look at horror movies in particular. Those can be used as political commentary pieces. We look at something like Quarantine that actually came true, you know, in a almost true life scary sense, but why has horror become such an effective genre for kind of these political concerns and social concerns?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. Now, horror is going back to childhood again, not my bag so much. My sister, who was 5 years older than me, absolutely loved horror films. And so she would force me to watch these horror films that I was probably too young to watch. So I've always been a little about horror. But what is interesting about horror films, either, straight up gore or psychological horror films, is that they have an ability, um, generally speaking, they're made very cheaply, right? So
Mhm.
you can make a horror film about a specific subject or about a specific thing that you're trying to tackle, and you can do it for a very low price. And if it makes it into theaters and it does well, a lot of people will go see it, right? And so you get a message out to a lot of people for a pretty low price, right? And that is something that we've seen a lot in the last couple of years too. Some of the highest grossing films of the last 5 years have been horror films that were made on shoestring budgets, right? So that has been a kind of a shift in the industry itself. But I think that one of the reasons that the genre of horror works for that is that people get engrossed into horror, right? If you're the kind of person that likes to go see a horror film, you're invested. You go, you sit down, you're going to watch it, you're going to pay attention to what's going on, and you're going to really, really be into it and kind of let that come over you, whether it's a gore slasher kind of thing or whether it's a psychological thing like a Silence of the Lambs or something like that, right?
Mhm.
Um, so those films are able to really grab their audience and really kind of hit them over the head with whatever it is they're trying to say. And they have a loyal audience as well. People who are into horror films are more likely to go to the movies and see a horror film than other folks are, right? So you might wait to see a romantic comedy at home on the streamer because you're like, well, that's going to be on Amazon in a couple of weeks or whatever, right? Whereas the person who likes to see horror films is highly likely to go to the movie theater and see it, and then possibly buy it or rent it at home as well, right? So I
Hmm.
think they have a very uh, loyal audience, and that helps you be able to tell a story that you want to tell and focus on whatever message it is that you're trying to put out. If that makes any sense, I'm not sure. So,
No, 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 absolutely, absolutely. And I would agree that because I have a lot of friends who are horror people who have kind of the same thing, like you said, kind of put it on me because your sister put it on you, and they've made me appreciate horror more and more as I get older. Um, but they go to the theater for everything. The
right.
release of Scream a few months ago,
Hmm.
Scream 7, they had their tickets for the first day.
Yeah.
And, here I'm waiting for it to drop on Amazon, like you
Right.
said.
Uh-huh. Well, my
Um,
15-year-old daughter, she really got into the Scream movies about 6, 8 months ago or whatever, and then she was so excited when she found out that Scream 7 was coming out and that she was going to get to see a Scream movie in a movie theater, right? She was so psyched, and so she got her mother to take her to go see Scream 7 like opening weekend or whatever, So like, it's it's older, younger, middle age, whatever, it's a popular genre, right? And people want to be a part of it.
yeah.
Do you like
Um,
horror?
I do appreciate horror now. I
Yeah.
did not grow up with it, but the Scream franchise, I love the Scream franchise. Art the Clown is one of my favorites. I
Yeah.
love him. And I love, always mess up his name, David Howard Thornton. He's got a three name, but the
Yeah.
actor that does Art the Clown is neurodivergent, which I think is
Hmm.
really neat and portrays such an amazing, beautiful character. So I would say I'm a fan now. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. 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 I
Um,
grew up with it. My sister was all, we're gonna go see Piranha in 3D. We're gonna go see Alligator, all those movies from that time period.
mhm.
And of course, like I said, my dad would let us watch anything. So we went to see those movies. He would take us, and I remember I saw Jaws 3 in 3D. You're too young for that, but yeah. So
Well, I saw, I'm no longer sadly Chicago based anymore, but I saw you post on social media the other day that the oh my gosh, why did am I blanking the name of the theater you just
the
talked
Music
about?
Box,
Oh, sorry, the
Music
Music
Box.
Box. They were doing a Hitchcock thing, and I'm
Yes.
like, see, that would be something that I would be into to go watch that festival or whatever they were doing for those days. I'm like, I could really get into that.
Yeah.
Hitchcock is
I
one that I
that's
want to watch.
Yeah, mental horror I like. Gore horror I'm not into. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
excited because Music Box is showing Rope on 35 millimeter, which is I think
Mm.
Hitchcock. I personally think is Hitchcock's best film, but I could get into a fight for that. But that's
So everything that we've kind of talked about is tied to somehow, and you mentioned McLuhan, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, but it all relates back to media literacy.
yeah.
So, what role do you think media literacy plays in helping these audiences understand these films and these messages and television, and even I would put in music and art in there as well.
Yeah, I think that's tough. I think part of the reason, man, I don't want to be this guy. I think I think part of the reason that the superhero genre does so well, um, and forgive me, but like, and I don't necessarily mean this in a negative way, but you can literally just turn off your brain and go into a movie theater and not think and just be like bombarded with image and sound for 2 hours or 3 hours, as the case may
Mhm.
be. And you're not required to think. And when you leave, you know that you had a good time. And there's not necessarily any sort of message that you're supposed to be getting from it in the end. And I think that there's probably nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, that's
No,
the
I mean
experience that I just had with Spielberg's film, right? Yeah,
you're not going in looking for like The Sixth Sense or Shutter Island or anything like that.
right. However, I do think that a decline in media literacy nationwide is why we have some of the problems that we have in our country, in particular with people not being able to discern what is real and what's not real on the internet, in the news, and in social media. That's a real problem. You know, there's not
Mhm.
a day that goes by that I don't have a conversation with one of my parents where they're telling me about something that's happening. And I'm like, well, no, that didn't actually happen, right? You know, and if you had gotten your information from a credible source, and of course, these days, what is a credible source, right? We get in, you know, you can get into that, right?
Mhm.
But I teach film history, and part of teaching film history is trying to demonstrate to students that everything that they're watching today has been grossly influenced by something that came before it, right? And by instilling that historical knowledge of cinema, they become more media literate, and they start to see patterns that occur in film, and they start to see how one thing has influenced another and how that then influences another, and then so on and so forth. And so I think that media literacy is very important, and a very important thing that we need to be teaching, um, not just to students in high school and in college, but to, you know, senior citizens as well, right? Everyone needs some media literacy training so that they understand what it is that they're looking at. It's always interesting. I'm teaching an online film history class right now that just started a couple of weeks ago, and they're into German expressionism right now.
Mm.
And so they're watching Nosferatu, they're watching Metropolis, they're watching The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and I'm getting all these discussion posts that are like, wait a minute, this movie has the same plot as Shutter Island. And I'm like, no, Shutter Island has the same plot as this movie, right? You know, they're like, oh, I know this Nosferatu guy from SpongeBob. And I'm like, great. I'm so glad that you made that connection, right? They're watching Metropolis and they're like, oh my goodness, all these images from Metropolis, they were in Blade Runner and they were in Star Wars and they were in this movie and that movie. And holy
Mhm.
crap, they're talking about the same thing in 1929 that we're talking about today, how the 1% control everything and the rest of us work to make it possible for them. And I'm like, yes, you know, and so like they're actually getting it, which is very, very exciting for me, you know. So and of course there are those who don't get it, and that's fine, you know, whatever, we work on that. But yeah, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but yeah, media
No, not
literacy
at
is
all.
so important, and that's one of the reasons I love teaching what I teach, is that you open up so many different eyes to, you know, yes, everything that you like now is because of this, right? We have this discussion with students every semester about Citizen Kane. You know, they're like, oh gosh, that movie. And I'm like, yeah, I totally get it. I fell asleep the first time I watched Citizen Kane too, you know. But you have to understand that every single movie you've ever watched exists because of what they did in Citizen Kane. And here, let's break that down, right? And so you start pointing all that out to them, and then they get it. They still don't want to watch it, but they get it, you know. So
Absolutely. I'm gonna skip ahead a little
yeah,
bit here, and I'll come back to the question I was
yeah,
gonna ask, but you kind of transitioned into this one a little bit nicely. So recently I went to a media educators conference, and they brought in some great people from the industry, the actual film industry and everything.
yeah,
And some people who run a film festival said that this year many of the submissions were short form vertical video.
yes.
Do you think that this short form vertical video is, as they say, shortening the attention spans of the audience? Do you think this is just a social scare, or is it really something that's going to be impacting our films? Because, quite honestly, and this is just my personal opinion, I don't want to sit and stare at my phone for 2 hours watching a vertical movie. I'd rather sit watching my giant TV in my living room or in a giant theater watching this. So, what do you think about this? What's your expertish opinion?
Well, I would definitely agree and support the concept that the short form content like Instagram Reels and TikTok and that sort of thing, these vertical videos, that they shorten our attention span. But I won't necessarily make them the big bad boogeyman or anything like that. I mean, this goes back to, you know, the attention span has been lessening and lessening over the years, right? And I think the biggest impetus of that, if you look at how fast editing got once music videos on MTV became kind of like the standard entertainment genre, right? Like the
Mhm.
pace at which films are edited increased dramatically once MTV became this like predominant entertainment platform, right? That young people were watching. And so you can see that. I mean, if you go back and look at a film from the 50s, I don't have exact numbers here, but you might have a cut every 15 to 20 seconds, right? And you're going to go from a long shot to a medium shot to a close up and then come back to a long shot again, right? And then in the 80s and 90s, cuts get down to like every 3 to 5 seconds, right? And these days, you have a cut in a movie every 1 to 3 seconds, right? It's just like we're constantly moving. And that's because our attention span does get shorter and shorter. The flip side of that, though, Alan, is that, you know, was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago? I can't even remember now when Oppenheimer and Barbie came out together, Barbenheimer, right? Oppenheimer
Mhm.
is like what, 3 hours long, and young people went out in droves to go see that and sat through a 3 hour movie about the guy who built the atomic bomb, right? And all of his picadillos, right? They went to see that and sat through it and loved it. And the film did like $1.5 billion, right?
Mhm.
So I think that we enjoy the dopamine hit of short form media. I know that I do. I am on Instagram way too long every day. I mean, it is bad.
Same.
Uh, you too, yeah. But I think we still have the ability to process and watch longer form content. So I'm not as scared of it as some people in the media might try to make it out like it's some horror that's coming to us, you know. But it does shorten our attention spans. I mean, this morning I was watching that film, The Final Countdown, and I was watching Instagram Reels while I was watching it. You know, so the movie just wasn't moving along fast enough for me. You know, so
I feel that, and I know it's not right, but in my head, I justify it that I'm a social media professor.
sure,
So I have to be
sure.
on social media, right?
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's
That
I do
that's
that too. Well, you know, it's my job to watch movies. I gotta, yeah. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So you touched a little bit in on the future, and I want to look ahead a little bit.
Sure.
Um, what do you think is going to be the role of film in the future? Do you think we're still going to be able to use it in education? Just say, I don't know, the next decade or so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people always want to. I mean, you want to watch a film from a standpoint of a educational thing. You know, like let's say I teach film history, right? We're that's not going away, right? We teach art
Mhm.
history. We're still talking about paintings that were done 500 years ago, right? You know, so that's always going to be there. And I think that, um, for different subject matter and that sort of thing, a film is always going to be a great way to tell a story inside of a classroom. And then, of course, film production. Someone was talking to me about this a couple of months ago about that the number of students in film schools is dwindling, and I'm like, well, I think you might need to do an analysis to see how many of those students were uh, what we might call foreign students, right, who were here in the United States going to school studying film, and now that we've cut off access to foreign students coming here, that overall university population is declining, right? And so, what's the through line there? You know, are there less students wanting to study film, or are there less people here studying film? I think is part of it. Um, but yeah, I mean, film has a bright future. Film's not going anywhere. In any like anytime I see these like crazy stories where people are like, "Oh, there will be no more cinemas anymore." I'm like, "No, there will be cinemas. They're just going to be different." You know, like I see that here. I live close to the Barrington, Illinois AMC, and the Dolby Theater is usually packed, the IMAX is usually packed, but there are other screens not so much, right? So maybe
Mhm.
in the future they're going to have fewer screens and more of them are going to be Dolby and more of them are going to be in IMAX because people are willing to pay for a premium experience. But if it's just a regular movie, they're going to stay home and watch it, right? So movies aren't going anywhere, but how we consume them will continue to evolve.
I think we're seeing that right now, specifically at this moment. We're recording this early summer right now. Oh my gosh, why am I blanking? The new Ryan Gosling film that just came out.
Project Hail Mary?
Thank you, Project Hail Mary.
Yeah.
I've heard and seen a lot of people go to see the special releases, the IMAXs and um, I think they did it in 35. Don't quote me on that, but because it's so aesthetically pleasing, and it's just so well made. I'll be fully transparent. I haven't seen it yet, so I can't tell you if it is or not.
You
But
should see it.
I know it is. I promise you, it is on my list. I'm trying to get through this teeny tiny dissertation that I'm writing, but it'll get done. I promise.
Teeny tiny
But
dissertation.
teeny tiny, yeah, yeah, yeah. But it'll. We're seeing that people want to go see these higher experiences like you're describing because of that. And I would also add other experiences, not just the film and screen quality, but like the dinner movie theaters, like the
Yes.
Hollywood Boulevards of the world, where you can go get a dinner and a movie and enjoy. We're seeing that built into the more, a few of the AMC's and the Regals around the country have that now. So
Yeah.
I think
People
that's a
want
nice
to,
experience
do the
too.
whole thing, right? It's a whole experience. And if you're going to go out, you might as well go out, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And if I could do dinner and an IMAX, I think I would do it.
Dinner in an IMAX. Yeah.
Exactly. So before we wrap up in the episode, because we're almost getting to that time or so, um, are there any upcoming things that you are working on, that any of your students are working on, that you want to share with our audiences? Feel free.
Oh, I have been working on two things. At the college where I teach, we built a movie theater a couple of years ago, and
Hmm.
so we are always trying to show a diverse slate of films. And if you're in the area, if you're in the Chicagoland area, those are free movies that you can come out to on Wednesdays and watch a free movie. So that's a really great thing to be able to share with the community, both with the community as a whole and with the college community. And then for several years now, I've been developing I don't want to call it a textbook because I don't really like textbooks, but I found that almost all the film history textbooks were either wildly inaccurate
Hmm.
and also not very diverse. So since 2020, I've been slowly putting together chapters of, for the lack of a better term, textbook for film history courses that corrects a lot of the inaccuracies that are out there about certain historical issues involving film history, and then making sure that the diversity is there. Why do you open up a film history textbook and it doesn't talk about the female directors who existed in the silent era? Why aren't they covered?
Hmm.
Why aren't they talking about the black directors that existed during that time? Why aren't they
Hmm.
talking about the deaf actors that existed during that time, right? And so I've been developing this, and I use it in my class, and a couple of my adjuncts use it in their classes as well. And I've still got like 6 chapters that I need to get done. So, like your small dissertation, uh, I have a small book that I really need to be working on instead of going to the movies. I need to be writing about them. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
If you need any methods of writing, I got them all. I've been doing them all. I don't know if they work, but hey,
My issue is time, uninterrupted time. Like if
that
I get
that
an
is the problem.
uninterrupted hour and a half, and by uninterrupted, I mean my kid doesn't come home, the dog doesn't need to go pee, the phone
Hmm.
doesn't vibrate, right? Like if I can do that, I can bang out a chapter
An
pretty
email
easily,
from a
right?
frantic student needing something right now that can wait
Right.
till next week.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I can bang
Absolutely.
it out if I can, but getting that time is very difficult, and that time, as you know, working on your dissertation is very precious. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, I like to hit my guests at the end with some rapid fire questions.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Just tell me your first thoughts, all right?
Okay.
I'm just
All
going to
right.
come at you. They're just, some are going to be fun, some are, I don't know, some are a little scary. How about that?
Okay.
You're at the movie theater. You're sitting and enjoying. Do you have a salty or a sweet snack in your hand?
Salty, always popcorn. Love popcorn. Yep.
Oh, there is nothing like movie theater popcorn.
Yep.
So I think I know the answer to this, but do you prefer streaming or watching in the theater?
I want to watch it in the theater, and I prefer to watch it on film, which is why I go to the music box as often as I can. Yeah, because they're actually showing it on 35 and 70 millimeter film. So yeah,
I think this will go into your next answer. Do you
yeah,
prefer the physical media or the digital media?
yeah. Physical media. I mean, obviously, I stream stuff, but if I like a movie, I buy a 4K release if it exists, and if not, that a DVD. Yeah. So
In your whole lifetime, what is the film you think you've seen the most?
the film I've seen the most. I'm gonna have to go with The Hunt for Red October. I've probably seen
Oh,
that more times than I should be allowed. Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Redford, right?
Sean Connery, Sean
Sean
Connery.
Connery, that
Yeah, and Alec Baldwin. Yeah,
yes, yes.
yeah.
Um, okay. What is scarier? Horror movies or the news?
Oh, the news for sure. Yeah, yeah. Because in the
I
horror movie,
agree.
you don't know what to expect. You know.
You don't know what to expect on the news anymore either. My
I
bingo
don't know. I
card's
kind
getting
of know what
full.
to expect in the news. I mean, that's the part that scares me. You know. So yeah.
Well, Brian, I want to thank you first and foremost for joining me today. I had a great time talking to you. And but I could talk about media for another 1,000 hours. Um, I try to keep my episodes at around 45 minutes though. So
Yeah. Okay.
we're
Yeah.
right there.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
again, thank you so much for coming out today.
Yeah. Thanks. It was fun to talk. Good to see you.
Absolutely. My friends, my listeners, I will keep going. Next episode, episode 4, we are talking about children's media in particular, which you know, Brian, is one of my favorite forms of media. Um, but coming up, previewing episode 6, we are talking about more short form media. So to be continued on our discussion that we started this time. And as my friend Mickey Mouse says, we'll see you all real soon.